Hello, beautiful children. It's Mrs. Day. I've just emerged from a deep dive into the different types of logical reasoning. Why the deep dive? Well, because your textbook is going to use these terms and it defines them, but it doesn't really take time to explain them. So I'm going to. Types of reasoning, types of logical reasoning. They are, the ones we're going to study are deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, and abductive reasoning. Let's just roll right into it. Deductive reasoning starts with a general rule and then applies it to specific situations to draw conclusions. Here is an example of deductive reasoning. Oh, and the answer must be true, and I'll show you what I mean. I start with a true statement. All of my students are 8th graders. Kai is one of my students, and so Kai must be in 8th grade. I start with a general rule that applies to many things, and then I apply a specific example. Now be careful with this, because if I see a kid in the hallway who's not one of my students, that doesn't mean they aren't in 8th grade. It just means I don't know. I don't know what grade they're in. All I know is that my students are all 8th graders, so if you see one of my students, they're an 8th grader. This is the classic example of deductive reasoning. It comes down from Aristotle. If all men are mortal, mortal means are born and then someday die. If all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, Socrates is mortal. We take a rule and we apply it to a specific instance or a specific example. After deductive reasoning comes inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is where instead of moving from rule to instances, you move from instances to rule. You take observations and use them to make a rule that may be true. Let me show you how that works. Eagles are birds. Someone's calling me. Who's Mr. Swain? Love that guy. As I was saying, eagles are birds and they can fly. Blue jays are birds and they can fly. Seagulls are birds and they can fly. Ergo, I might conclude birds can fly. Now, a lot of you immediately saw the problem with this conclusion because, hey, emus can't fly and they're birds. Hey, penguins are birds and they can't fly. Inductive reasoning is how you make a reasonable guess, but it could be false, as this one is right here. Here's another example of inductive reasoning. Students in my first period said they like anime. Students in my second period said they like anime. Students in my third period said they like anime. I could reasonably conclude my students like anime. However, I cannot conclude that every single one of my students like anime. You're making a general conclusion with the available evidence. So deductive reasoning, we take a general rule and we apply it to individual instances or circumstances, and inductive reasoning, we take individual circumstances and create a general rule. The last one is called abductive reasoning. And abductive reasoning is gonna sound a lot like inductive reasoning because it is. But instead of moving from observations to a rule, we're moving from observations to a prediction or a guess. Here's what that looks like. I take my observations and I use them to make my best guess or my best prediction. Like, Simone is wearing shoes I've never seen before. The shoes look new. It was Simone's birthday this weekend. I could reasonably conclude Simone got new shoes for her birthday. Now again, Simone maybe had those shoes in her closet for months and today was just the first time she wore them, or they're not new shoes at all. I've just never noticed them before. With abductive reasoning, you're using observations to make your best guess. Here's another example. Mrs. Day was sniffling and sneezing on Friday. She told us that her kids had had a cold. It's Monday and Mrs. Day is absent. I could make a guess, a prediction that Mrs. Day is sick. Deductive reasoning uses a rule to make a judgment about a specific instance. Inductive reasoning, you use specific instances to make a rule. Abductive reasoning, you use your observation or instances to make a prediction. Here is your pedantic fun fact for the day. Pedantic means excessively interested or obsessed with things being exactly precise. Here's your pedantic fun fact for the day. Everyone talks about Sherlock Holmes deducing things But he doesn't, because he's not using deductive reasoning. He actually uses abductive reasoning. He'll say, like, I observed that the person was that the footsteps had a limp, and I know that this side of town has a lot of criminals. Therefore, whatever. He actually uses abductive reasoning, not deductive reasoning. These are the three types of logical reasoning that we are studying: deductive, taking a rule and applying it to situations; inductive, taking situations and creating a rule; abductive, taking situations and making a prediction or a best guess. That's all. Let's get started.